in a replay. This is the Vault, episode 470. Definitely excited about this episode. Sunday Trustee Training, First Gen, Wealth Stumbling Blocks. So, we definitely want to talk about this. This is something that we were looking for ways for years now how to talk about the downside, not necessarily the negatives, but ultimately stumbling blocks. It's like, how do you talk about the failures when you want to talk about the successes? So, this is one of those found a way to politically correct say it. And so, here we go. Sunday Trustee Training, episode 470, First Gen Wealth Stumbling Blocks. We're going to just go ahead and speak from a position of you've been there, done that. There's a position where if you are, or if individuals are, the first gen, this is the hardest working almost generation. Not to say that successors will not work hard, but people have to realize if you are first gen, traditionally, that is going to be the hardest working generation to imbue standards, to imbue work ethic, to imbue a different thought process of teamwork within the family. You almost would like to think that they're a pariah where they feed and work together. So it was one of those things we remember talking to a Marine buddy we had, and he said, Marines are like roaches, we just keep coming. So it's very important to, we're going to cover some of these stumbling blocks. And we'll start out the gate. A lot of these things may be controversial, but we're addressing them for you to maybe there's something that you may have dealt with. But we know that these are not just stumbling blocks for one, they've been stumbling blocks for many. We've heard pretty much the same things throughout the years. Oh, it's hard for me to talk to my family about money. Well, if that's a stumbling block, then you see that it's a stumbling block. Not helpful. It's important to implore strategies of open conversation, welcoming conversation, sharing that you would like to have these open and welcomed conversations of transparency. See, these are the things that we talk about in trustee training. Yes, trusteeship should promote transparency within the family and communications. But if people come from an ego driven perspective, there will be blockages. That's a stumbling block. Not able to have open conversations about money. Oh, how much are you income in a year? How much are you netting a year? How much are you contributing to charity every year? Things of that nature. First gen stumbling blocks is most of the time it just depends on what significant other gets the information. Once they, whoever has it, traditionally they're going to be kind of like the lead on the information, and once you start employing the strategies, quote unquote, or different ideas that are different from working for money, that is a mentality. And so a wealth stumbling block for a first gen or anybody is going to be working for money. It's not to say you're working literally for it, but there are people that literally they consider themselves a slave to it. They feel like there's limiting factors on their wealth building potential. It's sort of like if you're an entrepreneur, you know what it's like to think. If you're an entrepreneur investor, you've had to make sometimes hard decisions, not just easy decisions. You have to think in these environments. A stumbling block is some people, they're, and here we go, not even just think, we would say thinking outside the box. How do you build wealth? You got to think outside the box. So when we hear thought processes that say, oh, do conventional wisdom, We've heard those thoughts before. Conventional wisdom says a lot of things can't be done. Sunday Trustee Training, first gen, well, stumbling blocks. Oh, why did you have to talk about it then? Why did you have to talk about the stumbling blocks that people run into? I might be running into them myself. I'm trying to get my children involved, or are they old enough, or when should I start talking to them? Here's the question: when was the first time you touched money in your life? Some people never touched money for a long time in their life, but when was the first time you touched a dollar bill, let alone something in monetary equivalent in the public? Where's that conversation to be had where you're first gen and we're going to tell you what is the use of this tool? It's a tool. When you're trained to be indifferent about money, you're indifferent about it. Whereas someone that's trained to be emotional about it, oh, my life is tied to this. And, oh, well, we're not saying it's not, but we're talking about it in a way in which people emotionally are fearful towards it. They don't, oh, it's no abundance. Right. So where are you coming from then? I'm coming from the limited capacity of what the economists say. The supply and demand of there's so much air and it's not enough. Right. Supply and demand, right? Right. So a well stumbling block maybe how does an family, how does an individual get into what we're going to go into right now? And this is abundantly clear, whether families know it or not. The first thing in the system is asset protection. Sure, anybody can say, oh, well, I got to make money to make money. Right. But at the same time, when you come from a generational wealth perspective, that mindset imbues that you were handed something first. Since you were handed something, you had to grow it from a steward position, not from a position of, I have to go out and get something to grow it. You already have something in house to grow it. Okay? By that being the case, the stumbling block, are you focused on protecting downside first, or are you focused on going out and getting on a money grab? And what we've heard from years of collecting data, yes, the public, they want to go out and get money. They talk about owning assets, owning debt in their name. Oh, what would they say? It's not even like, we'll cross over here. There's times there are people that will come to us with, oh, I got a birth certificate. Just because I was born in America, I'm worth some money. Hey, we're going to go ahead and go into this part of the conversation because these are the people that will also, or if they don't know, voting for the line social equity. Fine. Social equity comes with a deposit from a previous generation. So if you get bailed in, not bailed out of modern day banking practices of bailing in their customers because you're an indirect creditor, because you so-called said you were a creditor, because you were born and you had this invisible credit and you're the original bank and wealth stumbling block. Wealth is not created out of thin air. It comes from ideas, abstract concepts, us being able to say that we have a light bulb and we can see in the dark. That is what ingenuity in mankind and commerce has created. We're not afraid of the ones that don't want to do commerce. If you don't want to do commerce, that's called the wealth stumbling block. See how it goes back to, oh, well, I wanted to, did you want to make the money? That's what they say in the public. Oh, we got to make some money. Oh, we got to make money out of thin air. Well, stumbling block. Most of the modern world, you got to create something with a group of people and serve. Simple. It's complicated though. Why? Because you're in the age of the internet. Oh man, I live in the age of the internet. It's like the best time to be alive. You can Google everything and everything's findable. Private search, incognito, oh, I could find it. It's got to be on the internet. Really? So, how does it benefit the private to be on the internet? How does it benefit? But hey, well, stumbling block is people are mixing the public and the private, and they don't mix. It's like asking, well, how much money is available in the private? A lot more than is available in the public, and they got hypothecation in the public. Well, it has to be private first because it comes from the invisible place that people say, oh, well, where's the money coming from? Where's the money being printed from? From my birth certificate, right? No, it's not. Well, stumbling block. That's what that is. Because a few of us that have earned some shekels in our life, it comes from you actually sweating and working. So if you have a mindset of what we can actually classify as entitlement, you think because you were born somewhere, you're entitled to what? A piece of paper? That's the unfortunate part. It's a well stumbling block. You think, oh, I got a birth certificate. Oh, the government, yeah, they're using my name and they're making private mortgages off of it. We're in debt. That's what the public assumes. And that's how you know you're in the public. It's a well stumbling block when you're sitting over here assuming the public debt to your being. Oh man, the public debt's my debt. And every time you take on that thought process, you are. But what it comes down to is, are you in a position of asset protection first? When people have something to protect first, they think about the possible loss, not just thinking about the potential profits. This is the public. The public says, "Oh, I just need to get the potential profits." We were going to talk about something that might sound a little in not PC. People talk about this debt ceiling all the time in the public. Why would they not keep raising the public debt ceiling? That means that the government's going to be closed. Now, we could say it's a lot of institutions that don't run off the government funding. But whether you know it or not, businesses run off of that funding. They get grants from the government. The businesses, the 80% small businesses in America. Right. Well, stumbling block. It's not enough money available. Yeah, right. Well, stumbling block. You care about the debt ceiling and think it's not going to be raised if people think that. How does that even a conversation still in the public? Or are we going to raise the debt ceiling? It's just to keep people distracted. It's a well stumbling block. Of course, they're going to raise the debt ceiling. They have to raise the debt ceiling. Why? Because it's the public. That's what it's for. Debt. What assets does you can go find out. Does the government even own, like they tell you to own assets, the buildings that they're in downtown in DC? They rent them from private people. A wealth stumbling block is being distracted by wondering if they're going to raise the debt ceiling. But we had to talk about it because this is something that people bring up in consultations. This is what distracts people. We're in the age of the internet. It's so much information. What is accurate information? We actually talked to someone about that the other day. Oh man, what's I gotta find out what's it's so much misinformation on the internet. Right. So how do you operate? How do you operate? Well, stumbling block. How do you filter that information? These are first gens. Second gen might have a better education. They might be more trained to just figure it out. They saw you do it indirectly. Maybe, maybe not. First gen, the well stumbling block may be what we've seen is when families don't want to share information about how the first gen really got it. So when you get into your second and your third gens, sometimes what you get is you get families that may or may not talk about just not just money, but the work ethic, the business projects, the thought process behind it. So when we talk about it with the trustees and we talk about the trustee minutes and the diary of the trustee, the wealth stumbling block is that the first gen didn't put together a quality diary to pass along to the second and third gen. We've sat in a room with third and fourth and fifth gens, and yes, they have diaries from their families from first gen 100 years ago, 2 gens ago. That's the facts. So when they say, "Oh, I had a diary of my family," they pass along letters, different things, but we're specifically talking about the information of a diary, talking about the decisions that are being made every single day on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis or on a biannual basis or annual basis. The private family retreats. Appreciate New York for tuning in live, listen to replay. Always appreciate New York for tuning in live, listen to replay. Definitely appreciate Mississippi for tuning in live, listen to replay. We got Mississippi tuning in live, listen to replay. Feel free to type into the chat where you're listening live, listen to replay from. Feel free to hit the like, hit the subscribe. You know when we do our pop-up episodes, so you can come on live when we're on live. But always appreciate everybody that tunes in live and in the replay. So that's always a blessing, as they say. So Sunday trustee training, first gen stumbling blocks. We're talking about the downside of it. The first gen has to be the most accountable. They got to put the system in place. That's how you know you're almost one of the better generations, because if you are first gen or the first gen is one of the better generations because they had to put the system in place. They put a system in place. What is the system of wealth preservation, asset protection did you put in place? You were thinking at a higher level if you didn't get that from previous generations. Or that first gen was really searching. You think about that. Asset protection, asset allocation, asset development. These are beautiful things. The first gen might put in a lot of legwork. I'm not saying that second and third don't put in the legwork. First gen, they're putting in the legwork. They're putting in the brain work. They're creating the legacy, the spark of legacy. First gen wealth stumbling block is writing out the vision, the mission statement for the family. Oh, I didn't put my mission on my door yet. When I walk out the house every day, I see my mission. I see what I'm supposed to do. I see I'm supposed to do what I'm supposed to do. First gen stumbling blocks, they think they could take days off. You taking days off from what? Wealth? Or you taking days off to be in poverty? It's a choice. Do you see it in your mind's eye? Do you feel it in your heart? First gen wealth. You got mental health at an all-time high, but they're telling you it's generational wealth building. How's it generational wealth building and they got mental health? You think you're going to be out mentally health, sound, with money? It's better to hold on to it before you get it. It's better to hold on to it even while you got it. Mental health is definitely important to hold on to it. And why not be able to tell the story to the second and third gen and say, hey, look, if you run into any of these, what do they call them? Pre-hereditary, it's in your DNA. Yeah, what that's like saying, is poverty in your DNA? Laziness? Not adapting? Not exponential? Nah. Limited. Lack. That's what people that's how it goes nowadays. So it's a development of not just the physical accumulation of wealth, it is the mental development of wealth, the mental preservation of wealth. Mental, not just physical. Oh yeah, I know I want that. I want the physical. So yeah, what happened to the mental? Did you hold on to your mental in that process? Because it's a process. Did you hold on to it? Did you develop it? What are you doing to develop it? Because it's a wealth stumbling block for most people. Mentors say, hey, look, as long as you're open to learn something new every day. So we're open to learn something new every day. It might be a tough call because then you're not taking days off. When you got to go to your reflection shoot at the end of the day and it says, what did you learn something new? And you got to force yourself to learn something new every day. Otherwise, you're going to sit there and you write nothing. What did you do to get out of your comfort zone today? Well, stumbling block. You think it's not. I know you don't think it's not because you may not have it. But the people that are in our sector, the people that relate to understanding what wealth is all about, if it's abundant, that means it's growing at all times. Well, stumbling block is people get satiated. We had to really write that down in the reflection because when you see that when you're able to write in your reflection that you're satiated, it says something about you. Hey, you're being vulnerable to yourself. You're able to say candidly, hey, look, I was a little what most people in public terms would call comfortable. I worked hard to be comfortable. Satiated. Ladies and gentlemen, the average median income in the United States is less than $100,000. For a moment, we're going to stretch you, whether you have wealth building ability or not. So, let's just say in one day, you make $50,000. Let's just say in 1 week, you make $50,000. Would you get comfortable maybe for a few weeks? Did people get comfortable? Many will get comfortable in the world. Not all, but many. This is a wealth stumbling block because that's a reality. Whether you know it or not, we don't have to look. We on the line with them on the consultations. We know what people are gonna say because we hear it. We ask the questions, and yes, they're gonna get comfortable. They're gonna be satiated. So you think about that. Say you make $50,000 when you wake up in the morning. You make that before 12 o'clock. $50,000. People get comfortable. Well, stumbling block is what we talked to someone about yesterday, resting on your laurels. Do you have time to loathe, or are you resting on your laurels? Whether you know it or not, most of the greats are waking up super early still. Oh, you don't want to be in the category of good, right? Wake up at 8 or 9, get out of the bed and start doing things 8 or 9, right? That's good. That whether y'all know it or not, in the public, that's good. In the private, great starts anywhere from 4, no later than 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Ex-military brats, ex-military people. I mean, hey, if you want to push them to 8:30, go ahead. But most of the population that is outworking, outperforming, managing billions, growing multi-millions. Hey, if you don't think they're putting in the 4 a.m. ski works, if you don't think they're putting in the 4 a.m. workouts, getting at the 5 a.m. wake ups, if you don't think they're doing the 6 a.m. wake ups, they're doing that. Well, stumbling block is, oh, I don't want to put in the extra hours. If you're getting up at 8, somebody got 4 extra hours on you. Someone got 3 extra hours on you. Those 3 extra hours make a difference every day. Once again, we said the first gen usually is the hardest working gen. Right. Supposedly, so people can say, oh, my children gonna have it easier than me. That's what people like to say in the public. Right. Or if you say that in the public, what do you think you're saying in the private? Don't private people say, oh, I'm not gonna give my kids any money. Right? Isn't that what they say in the private? I'm not gonna give my kids any money. I'm gonna give it all to charity. Right? So they're gonna give it all to charity. It's not a day. It's just a wealth stumbling block for ones that don't do. Wealth stumbling block is not showing up for that. We appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen to replay. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen to replay. This is the Vault episode 470. Sunday Trustee Training. First gen wealth stumbling blocks. Like we say, we definitely wanted to do this episode because it's a long awaited one where you hear people say, oh, oh, let's I mean, it's so many reasons not to do. We'll just say it's a lifestyle. Well, stumbling block, people want it to be fast food. Wealth stumbling blocks are thinking wealth building, wealth preservation is fast food, instant food. We look forward to hearing from the consultations. Christian at trustchristian.com. Christian at trustchristian.com. We're actually really excited over at the Vault right now with the reach out and the people that have reached out here in the first quarter here. Actually, it's just been a good one. And hey, we already know what the second half of the year is looking like based off of the first half. Demand is strong. And it's interesting because you see shifts in many different things. But right now, once again, we're going to stick to the theme at the Vault, asset protection. We've done pretty much asset protection trustee training for 5 years plus. But we're talking about the workshops, but they've been themed asset protection because that comes first. And we know most people out in the public, oh, hey, I got to get everything first. Then I got to protect it. Yeah. Then they come back. Well, I got all the assets in my name now. I got the mortgage in my name now, and I don't know how to get it out. Right. Then I went online, I looked on the internet, and there's this thing called the St. Germain Act or something. And it says that, hey, we can do this and do that. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The vault, we're not lawyers. But we'll say, guess what? Are they the individuals you're listening to? Because what we're going to say is, we actually say, yeah, there's nothing wrong with getting a lawyer to actually help you, whether it's titling over the property, whether you go through a title company, but having a lawyer around is going to help you even defend the situation if it does have to go to court. So we actually do, and have always been that way. But we're not promoting the vigilante antics or tactics of hey, trying to use any particular act as a justification. It doesn't work that way. Or how it works is as good as your team. How good is your team? Well, stumbling block is, oh man, I don't know how I put together a team or a board of trustees. I gotta figure out who's gonna be the secretary of the trusteeship. I gotta figure out who's gonna be the treasurer of the trusteeship for the family. Oh, we talked to someone. Oh man, I don't really have any professionals in my family. Well, now you see the disadvantage. So when you say, oh, there's a disadvantaged family, sounds like you might be one. Sounds like that's a disadvantaged family. We don't even have a financial professional. We don't even have a legal professional. There are families that have that in place. Is that a disadvantage? We're not going to call it that at the vault, but in the public, that's what they call it. The public, they try to get that so you can get grants now. Oh man, I need grants coming to my family. Why? Because we were disadvantaged. We weren't brought up with that information first. Exactly. And they actually have grants for the wealth stumbling block. Because here's a wealth stumbling block, whether you know it or not. Wealthy people work together. It's a group mentality. It's a servant mentality. It's a own trust Christian, own nothing, control everything mentality. It's the servant mentality. It's the trader mentality. But oh no, no. When you went through public school, they got you thinking about fear and public and lack. There's some scarcity. Because the public school has some daggone economist. Supply and demand. They don't believe in spirit. So they telling you the world. What they can measure. We got to measure it, ladies and gentlemen. That's what happens in wealth building. You measure it. That's what happens in wealth preservation. You measure it. You want to know how you did something great? They say you measure what you pass along from one generation to the next. You're not left to giving somebody empty handedness. You're not giving them hot air theory. Oh, well, son and daughter, this is how wealth building works. No, you actually can show them the manual that you built from scratch, or the first gen built from scratch. Once again, we sat around families that have actually developed manuals, that have developed diaries, that have developed what? Ultimately, the system of wealth building. Oh, I went through public school. You're right. And you didn't learn wealth building. Why? Because the people there didn't do it. Well, they're teaching you about world history, ain't teaching you about capitalism and how to survive and thrive and have the skills to pay the bills. It's like when you go to college, they're also paid to give out a curriculum. So what's any different when you're in public school? Now, whether it's a stumbling block or not, we understand it is programming. And there is a program for wealth. You can smell it. You can hear it calling to you. If you don't, those are stumbling blocks. You don't just think you're wealthy. You have to feel you're wealthy. A stumbling block is not all of the above. You got to be. We sit around these individuals. In wealth, what's interesting, when people talk about causation and correlation, what's interesting is that we can actually say this, and this is a high correlation from the vault's perspective. There's a high correlation We're people that manage money and are very indifferent towards it and have a stewardship mentality. Whether you, hey, if you want to be emotional, if you want to be in your feelings about it, or hey, you could think people are evil or whatever, but hey, look, the people we've met at the vault, maybe not everybody, of course we can't say everybody, but a large, high degree of the private wealth environments we sit in. Even we brought some people on the channel here, accredited people. We bring them on. They're highly indifferent towards the capital, whether they've had it multiple generations or sometimes first gen. First gen has really good, strong integrity mentality, especially when it comes to like large lump sums. We appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening, replay. Once again, appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening, replay. Christian at trustchristian.com. Hey, this is the episode for, well, if I had a stumbling block, what would it be? If I got a blockage, I gotta identify it. That's true. You gotta identify the blockages in order to fix them. And once you identify it, you do the opposite. Do you practice these other things? Because we're talking about best practices, or we're talking about, once again, the first gen wealth stumbling blocks and how to overcome them. Appreciate you for tuning live, listen to replay. As y'all can hear, we excited. It's been it's been a great ride so far this year, and we're just really excited about continuously putting out the content for the viewing public. Because you're not mad that your public school teachers didn't give you the education to build wealth. Some people aren't even mad their parents didn't help them have the tools to be able to build and preserve and pass along wealth. Well, that is a private education, clearly not a public one. So the demand is for private education. And when people seek that and they're willing to invest privately just as much as they're willing to take on public debt for a public education, did we say it? A well stumbling block is taking on public debt for a public education and not getting an exponential return. Talking about you're over 30 with student loans and you're a doctor. Back in the day, whether you want to say it or not, we can say it. It's known. People avoid these professions almost at times. It's not propaganda, ladies and gentlemen. The conversation is, well, ask your children, hey, or ask yourself, you going to med school? You going to be a lawyer? These so-called noble professions of higher learning. The next thing you know, you got people coming out with tons of student loans. And are we in the era of student forgiveness loans? We are in the era when you stop asking for benefits, the wealth stumbling block is removed. There are no benefits other than work. This is where the world is to be trained, most likely. We'll see. When you're comfortable, people don't work. They get comfortable. They get satiated. They like benefits. They like entitlements. They think because they were born with a birth certificate at times, they think that they're worth as good as gold. And okay, ladies and gentlemen, we beg to differ. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Christian at trustchristian.com. Once again, that's Christian at trustchristian.com.